Invincible Versus is here. This fast-paced tag team fighter, crafted by former developers of Killer Instinct 2013, wave dashes into its rightful spot within the realm of competitive fighting games, and with it, brings iconic heroes and villains from the popular comic book and television series together for a blood-soaked ballet of punches and clubs and lasers and kicks. It's been a couple weeks since the game's official launch, and over the course of those 2 weeks, I've spent a lot of time digging deep into everything Invincible Versus has to offer to find out what this game is all about and what makes it tick. There's some good here, and there's some bad. And depending on what kind of player you are, what's good and what's bad might be very different. But for someone like me who isn't well versed in the Invincible IP, but has been covering and breaking down competitive fighting games for almost 20 years now, I found that Invincible Versus has a pretty major weakness that, funny enough, might also be its greatest strength. Saludos mi gente, greetings everyone, my name is Dream King and today, we're reviewing a game, y'all. But before we get into it, please like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell if you dig my content and if you love fighting games. Your support helps out a ton and it is always very much appreciated. Now, let's get into the video. Invincible Versus is a 3v3 team-based fighting game that revolves around the use of assists and a tag system. Living up to the Versus in its name, this title is built upon some of the foundational mechanics you'd find in other Versus-style fighting games like Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Dragon Ball FighterZ, and 2XKO, just to name a few. You're tasked with selecting 3 fighters from a launch roster of 18, with more on the way via DLC, and the objective, as you might have guessed, is to be the first to completely deplete the health bars of all 3 of your opponent's characters. It's a violent and gory video game, with fighters showing visible wear and tear as the match progresses, and KO'd opponents often exploding into a burst of blood and guts. Fortunately, the developers included a creator mode that allows you to tone down the bloodshed to make it more content creator friendly, and you can easily toggle this off and on in the options menu, which is an excellent inclusion. Invincible Versus comes packed with several of the main modes you'd expect to find in a modern-day competitive fighting game. There's local and online versus, an arcade mode, story mode, training, and a gallery where you can peruse various pieces of concept art, listen to music, check out the game's cutscenes, and even view comic book covers that can be unlocked by playing the game. This tag fighter was developed by a new studio called Quarter Up, a subsidiary of Skybound Games. It's a small core team that's at the helm of it all, and to be honest, you can kind of feel that smaller scope and scale of this game when exploring its various offerings, which is good in some ways and not so good in others. Take the game's story mode as an example. Players are able to hop into an original story that is designed to feel like an episode of the TV show. Without giving too much away, the basic gist of the story is as follows. The various heroes and villains from the Invincible series all find themselves locked in battle, hallucinating, and no one is who they seem. It turns out that everyone is stuck in some kind of simulation, and once they snap out of it, they realize they're trapped in a kinetic chamber that is being used to harvest their life force, as this kinetic energy is apparently a super powerful fuel source that can power entire civilizations. A mysterious threat has captured everyone, and as you play through the story mode, you watch the events unfold and learn who is behind it all. The first major takeaway from this story mode adventure is that it is very short. It took me a little over an hour to complete it, and many others online have shared similar completion times. Even by fighting game story mode standards, that's pretty darn short. And the writers made it a point to include every character on the roster in the story, which means some corners needed to be cut to fit it all in within that time frame. Now, for someone who actively watches the show and has read the comics, this story mode likely did a lot more for them than it did for me. Knowing who everyone is, what each character is all about, and how all of the allegiances and relationships between characters work going into Invincible Versus a story mode likely bolsters the experience up quite a bit. But for someone like me who knows very little about the series and was hoping that this game might be a nice gateway into the TV series and comics, I walked away from this story mode feeling underwhelmed and a bit lost. You get some lines of exposition within the dialogue between characters throughout the various cutscenes, like Eve saying, "You're not gonna kill my boyfriend today" about Mark, or Mark calling Omni-Man dad, which I did know about beforehand. But with 18 characters being stuffed into this hour-long experience, I felt like there just wasn't enough time to sit with anything, or have any character's motivations fleshed out in a meaningful way. There's also no lead-in for this story, as far as I could tell. It starts off with everyone being stuck in the simulation, and Mark and Omni-Man are mid-battle, but like 18 of these super-powered beings have been captured somehow, and I can't tell you how this mysterious threat managed to accomplish that. The story also ends on a cliffhanger that is obviously meant to set up future DLC, which is to be expected, but the big shock at the end didn't feel all that impactful due to the fact that there simply wasn't enough time to build it up. What's most confusing about this story mode is that the developers had an opportunity to make the narrative more welcoming to people who are new to the series, and it could have been done very organically. Invincible Versus introduces a brand new character into the Invincible universe in Elemental. She was created by Robert Kirkman himself, the Invincible series creator, and in the game's story mode, we learn that the Invincible crew is meeting her for the first time here, despite having heard of her before. Why not make the story revolve around Ella and her meeting everyone so that we can not only find out more about her backstory, but also give each character a reason to give some insight into who they are and what they're all about. The developers said in interviews ahead of the game's launch that Ella would be a major part of the story mode, and while she does have decent screen time, I didn't feel like she really played a major role in the events of the story, aside from her contributing to the finale during the story's climax. Beyond that though, there are some really cool moments to be found in Invincible Versus' story mode, like Mark bashing his own head into a wall to escape the simulation, or that crazy zero-gravity dodge scene, and there's a whole lot of action and fighting to witness here. Some of the cutscenes look great too and showcase several of the characters' powers nicely. If you're looking for character lore though, you can find some of that within the Invincible Versus arcade mode, specifically in its endings. Arcade mode is a pretty standard fighting game affair, allowing players to battle through a ladder of foes with a team of their choice, and upon completing a ladder, you are rewarded with an ending that is tied to the point character you chose. These endings provide more insight into who each fighter is, what fuels them, and whether they're good or evil or somewhere in between. So if you're new to the Invincible series and want to learn more about each character, I'd recommend playing through the arcade mode with each fighter and unlocking their endings before playing the cinematic story. Outside of story and arcade mode, there isn't much else in terms of single-player content to dig into. There is a tutorial mode that walks you through how the various aspects of the game's mechanics work, but absent here are the combo trials and missions you'd find in most modern fighting games. There is incentive to play through the arcade ladders and to hop into the game's various versus options thanks to the character mastery rewards you can unlock, however. Each character has 23 levels of mastery that you can raise them to by earning experience points, and each level gets you a reward like new character colors, profile icons, backgrounds, and more. Unlocks here are fairly generous as you can knock out the majority of them for a character in a few hours just by playing matches, though it will take you a little bit of grinding to unlock the rewards at the higher levels. Invincible Versus also offers players the ability to review replays of their recent online matches. The replay feature here is pretty standard and grants players a few options to better analyze their match footage, such as skipping ahead one frame at a time and displaying hitboxes and inputs on screen. Also, replays load crazy fast in this game, faster than any other modern fighting game I've experienced, which is cool. But there's no way to search for replays from other players and no replay takeover feature to be found here, which is a bit of a bummer. When it comes to modes and offerings, that's pretty much everything in Invincible Versus. It has some of the main essentials that modern fighting games generally ship with, and while everything here is functional and serves its purpose, nothing here feels particularly fleshed out or groundbreaking. With all of that out of the way, we can now talk about the main event in Invincible Versus. The combat system is the bedrock of this 3v3 tag fighter. It's the reason players will purchase and stick with this game, and there is a lot to unpack here. Now, I know it's a little on the nose to say that a new fighting game designed by former developers of Killer Instinct 2013 feels a lot like Killer Instinct 2013, but it's really the best comparison I can make here to get us started. When KI 2013 was first released, I remember it taking me more time than usual to wrap my head around how to play the game. The mental stack created by its various gameplay systems made it difficult to focus while in the heat of battle, which resulted in feeling like I just couldn't put the pieces together and even impacted things like basic movement for me, making the game feel sluggish at first. It's that feeling when you see something happen in a match, know that you're supposed to respond with a specific option, but your brain can't quite get the signal to your hands properly because you're trying too hard to focus on multiple options at once and you're struggling to remember how these systems even work at a moment's notice. But once you play for a few hours and start getting into a nice groove, things begin to click. You start reacting to and breaking heavy auto doubles, you start landing shadow counters on block strings, and you remember which ender is your damage ender and start hitting it consistently. Then the game opens up immensely, you start to see the depth, and you become absolutely hooked. That's what Invincible Versus' gameplay is like, but amplified by several notches. In Killer Instinct, you're tasked with learning all of its systems and mechanics in a 1v1 format, which means you can stick with one character and take the time to get comfortable without any variance in your fighter's toolkit, assuming you're not jumping from character to character. But in Invincible Versus, you have a team of 3 characters, which instantly adds much more difficulty to the learning curve. And I could be wrong, but it also feels like there are more foundational game mechanics to learn in Invincible Versus than there were in Killer Instinct. Not only do you have to remember all of the game's mechanics, what they do, how to apply them, and how much meter they all use, but you are also required to remember what each of your unique characters can do, their basic combo routes, how their assists work, and how they can best utilize the numerous options you have in combat. Invincible Versus drops an encyclopedia of required knowledge on your head and says, here, you'd better learn all of this if you want to stand a chance in a real match. And it is this steep ask that I feel is the game's biggest weakness, but also its greatest strength. There are a lot of mechanics and techniques that you can utilize in this game, but the core of Invincible Versus' gameplay lies in its active tag system, a way to swap out your point fighter for another member of your squad while continuing your offense. And assists, which let you call upon your teammates to help out your point fighter with a quick attack before jumping back off screen. What makes Invincible Versus unique among its peers is its counter tag system. This mechanic allows a player on the receiving end of a tag to counter it and cut their opponent's combo short. Much like Killer Instinct's combo and counter breaker system, counter tag has several options that can drastically change the outcome of these interactions. If a player uses a standard active tag during a combo, the opponent on the receiving end can counter it by hitting medium plus heavy in time with the incoming fighter's initial tag attack. A successful counter tag stops the tagging player's combo dead in its tracks and resets the situation. But alternatively, the tagging player can delay their tag timing by pressing heavy while their character is coming in. Visually, this tag delay looks the same as a standard tag, but they delay their attack slightly right before hitting the opponent, which messes up the timing of the counter attempt, causing it to fail. The aggressor can also use a tag feint to bait the opponent into trying to counter tag, which sees the incoming character fly in, but forego their initial tag attack. If successful, the player who attempted the counter tag is left wide open and will very likely be eating a full combo for their troubles. But should the feint fail, the player who initiated it will drop their combo and be left open to a punish themselves. Not only can you choose the incorrect response and fail a counter tag, but pressing the buttons with the incorrect timing anywhere during this interaction also results in failing the attempt due to either being too early or too late. This whole system is clearly inspired by Killer Instinct's combo breaker and counter breaker system, creating a similar mind game between the players that encourages engagement even when one player is stuck in a combo. But if counter tagging feels too risky for you, or you just want something that's a bit more reliable, you can also opt to use Invincible Versus' assist breaker mechanic. When you're being hit, you have the option of calling in one of your teammates to break the opponent's combo at the cost of 2 bars of boost gauge, this game's EX meter. This quickly gets you out of trouble, but in addition to its meter cost, Assist Breaker also inflicts gray health in the amount of about 30% to the life bar of the teammate who performed the breaker. And while Assist Breaker is a great defensive option, that gray health becomes a major risk thanks to the game's snapback mechanic. Just like in games such as Marvel vs. Capcom 2, you can hit the opponent with a unique attack that sends their point character out of the fight and drags in a character of your choice. In Invincible Versus, performing a snapback and bringing in a character with gray health immediately causes them to lose all of that recoverable health. And doing this can help you get an early lead if the opponent breaks toward the start of a match, or if the opponent isn't careful, put one of their characters much closer to death than they realized. And this interaction is a great representation of the game's incredibly high learning curve that I spoke about earlier. Because out of all of the matches I've played since launch, I can't recall a single time where one of my opponents utilized this strategy against me. And it's not because it's a weak play. In fact, I've found it very useful myself due to how quickly and often people tend to use Assist Breaker, but I believe it's absent from a lot of players' toolkits right now simply because there are so many other things that need to be learned first in order to play this game properly. They don't even realize that this strategy exists. Adding to the complexity of Invincible Versus is its combo system. Similarly to Killer Instinct 2013, Invincible Versus utilizes a combo limit meter that increases as you add more hits to the combo counter. And once that meter is full, the opponent is blown out and drops out of the sequence. The combo limit meter has to be managed constantly, and using resources such as assists and tags can subtract from the combo limit and allow you to pull off longer and more damaging combos. The combo system itself is very free-flowing and open. There isn't much in the way of restrictions when it comes to things like using the same special move over and over again, or limits on special properties like ground bounces and wall bounces, because those types of regulations come in the form of the combo limit bar and breakers, just like in Killer Instinct. This game uses the Magic series, light, medium, heavy into launcher, like other Versus games. But you can also chain all kinds of things together like normal into special move, back into normal, back into special move, or standing medium into crouching medium over and over again. The only rule here is that you can go from a lower strength normal to a higher strength, but not the inverse. So you could hit light, medium, heavy and have it all chain, but you couldn't go from heavy to medium to light. By this point, I've covered a handful of the most important foundational mechanics in Invincible Versus, and I could probably talk about each one on its own for a long time. But there are a lot more mechanics and abilities in this game that would take far too long to discuss in depth. So I'm going to run through the rest of the main combat mechanics and features and give a quick explanation of how each one works to further illustrate just how deep this rabbit hole actually goes. Invincible Versus is a fighting game that undoubtedly brings in a lot of casual fans from outside of the fighting game space due to the Invincible series being popular in other forms of media. During the game's open beta, we saw content from several such casual players who were fans of the series, tried out the game because of that, and quickly got stuck trying to figure out and understand some of the basic functions of the game. Granted, some of the complaints people had were absolutely egregious, but there were also valid complaints out there too. The beta was also infamously plagued by rage quits and one-and-done sets, where a large portion of the matches people played, myself included, were either ending in the opponent quitting early or leaving after the first game. Post-launch, I've found that I still get hit with these rage quits, and what's interesting about them is that they often happen early into a match as opposed to at the end of a fight, like we see in other fighting games. I have been hit with so many rage quits that occurred immediately after me starting my first combo of the match. People are literally getting opened up, see that I know how to do extended combos in the game, then seemingly decide that I'm too advanced of a player for them to hang and pull the plug. And in these scenarios, I'm usually not doing anything insanely high level, just basic bread and butter combos that I extend by using assists. But because there is so much to learn in this game up front, it feels like newer players and those who aren't hardcore fighting gamers quickly get overwhelmed and discouraged to continue. And while this happens in every modern fighting game, as fighting games are hard to learn in general, it feels especially prevalent in Invincible Versus. That's not to say Invincible Versus doesn't make concessions to help newcomers and casual players get in on the action. The standard control scheme in this game is a simple input system, with the option to play traditional motion inputs as well. And there are quite a few attacks like some boosted special moves and supers that either have armor, are safe on block, or both, allowing players to throw things out for big rewards with little risk. But there's just so much going on in this game that I can't imagine casual players won't feel very overwhelmed when trying to learn how to play. And honestly, I wouldn't blame them. Based on what I've already seen and experienced, I think this game is going to struggle to keep the attention of casual and lower skilled players over the long haul. And when you have a fighting game that is based on a popular IP, one that gained its popularity from things that aren't fighting games and has the opportunity to bring in non-fighting game players for the first time, making its barrier of entry so dense that it deters those players is a major issue and what I feel is the game's biggest weakness. Unfortunately, this is an issue that I don't think can be fixed without completely overhauling the combat system or adding an extremely polished and full-fledged single-player mode like Street Fighter VI's World Tour mode to capture and hold the attention of these players. But like I said earlier, what's bad for certain folks might actually end up being good for others. To a hardcore fighting game fan like me, this weakness is not a weakness at all. In fact, it's what I enjoy most about the game. There is so much to figure out, so much to learn, and so much depth here that it really feels like the community hasn't even scratched the surface of it yet. Even after all of the time I've already put into the game, I'm still working on implementing and getting comfortable using certain mechanics like Heroic Strike and Arena Shift, and I feel like I have so much more to explore and learn with each of my characters too. Not to mention a whole roster of other fighters I still need to try out. Best of all, I find myself constantly theory crafting the game whenever I'm not playing it. To me, that's a great sign that a game's core gameplay is really damn good. Invincible Versus does need to tighten up a few loose ends though. There are things like easy unblockables or very hard to blockables that need to be addressed, as well as the gaps between standard block strings potentially needing to be looked at a little more closely and revised. As it stands right now, you can armor or invincible reversal through basic strings like light, medium, heavy, and that feels like a bit too much. But Killer Instinct 2013 also launched with similar hiccups, including unbreakable combos that were ultimately patched out. On top of that, the developers have already shown that they are not only listening closely to what the community wants and needs, but that they are willing to make changes very quickly to ensure that the game continues to improve. A tightly knit group of developers who clearly have their hearts in this game and are actively listening to the community is exactly what Invincible Versus needs to reach its full potential. And I strongly believe that the folks at Quarter Up are going to turn this game into the powerhouse it deserves to be. Invincible Versus doesn't offer a lot when it comes to single-player content and other features and modes, especially when stacked up against many of the other modern fighters on the market. It has several of the main staples you'd want in a fighting game, but everything feels very stock standard with an emphasis on simply functioning and not so much on innovation or being feature-rich. On the flip side, Invincible Versus fosters a golden goose in its gameplay. The combat is deep, engaging, and fun. And even though there is a little bit of jank that needs to be tightened up, it is clear that the team at Quarter Up has focused the majority of their energy on developing and polishing the various gameplay systems, and have done so with a ton of passion and love for what they're doing. The developers have also already shown that they are willing to listen to feedback and make important changes to the game swiftly, which is exactly what you want to see for a modern fighting game. This game asks a lot of its players up front, so much so that it risks overwhelming newcomers and casual players alike, deterring them from wanting to stick around for the long haul and encouraging rage quits. That being said, if you're willing to put the time in and pay what Invincible Versus asks of you in blood, sweat, and tears, you will be rewarded with a deep, complex, fast-paced fighting game that will keep you coming back for more. If you're not a hardcore fighting game fan and want to give this game a shot, I'd say do it. But try your best to stick with it until you pierce that thick barrier of entry. And if you are a hardcore fighting game player who wants a game with a ton of depth and room for exploration, as well as the ability to pull off some super swaggy combos, pick up Invincible Versus right now and hit the lab. Just be prepared to lose a lot of hours of the coming weeks in the training room. Have you played Invincible Versus? If so, what do you think about it so far? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this review, please be sure to like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching.